Emma Parker had never been the kind of person who asked for help. Life had trained her not to. Ever since her divorce 5 years ago, she had been raising her daughter Lily on her own. Every morning began before sunrise, packing school lunches, checking homework, rushing through traffic to get Lily to school before starting her own shift at the local accounting office. It wasn't easy, but Emma had learned to survive on determination and love. Lily was the center of her world, the reason Emma kept pushing forward even on the hardest days. Her parents lived only 20 minutes away, in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Richard and Diane Parker had always been comfortable retired early, spending their days gardening, attending book clubs, and planning weekend getaways with friends. Yet despite the short distance, Emma and her parents were never very close. They spoke occasionally, visited on holidays, but there was always an invisible wall between them. Still, Emma believed one thing with certainty. When it truly mattered, family would show up. One Wednesday afternoon, Emma received a call from Lily's school nurse. "Mrs. Parker, Lily has been complaining about severe stomach pain again. We think it's best if you take her to the hospital." Emma's heart immediately dropped. Lily had mentioned stomach aches for a few days, but Emma had assumed it was something minor, maybe a stomach bug. Within 30 minutes, Emma was sitting in the emergency room, holding Lily's small hand as doctors ran tests. The hours felt endless. Finally, a doctor walked in holding a clipboard. "Mrs. Parker," he said gently, "your daughter has appendicitis. Her appendix is inflamed and will need to perform surgery soon to prevent complications." Emma's chest tightened. "Surgery," she whispered. "The procedure is common and generally safe." The doctor reassured her, "but it should be done within the next few days." Emma nodded slowly, trying to absorb the information. Her mind raced through 1,000 worries at once: hospital paperwork, time off work, Lily's recovery. But one problem stood above the rest. She would need help. That evening, after settling Lily into bed, Emma stared at her phone for several minutes. Calling her parents felt strangely difficult. But Lily was their granddaughter. Surely this would be different. Emma finally pressed the call button. Her mother answered after a few rings. "Hi, Emma." "Hi, Mom," Emma said carefully. "I need to ask you something. What's going on?" Emma explained everything: the diagnosis, the upcoming surgery, the hospital stay. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "I was wondering if you and Dad could help watch Lily for a few days before and after the surgery," Emma finished. "Just until I can get everything sorted." There was silence on the other end of the phone, not the comforting silence of someone thinking carefully. An uncomfortable silence. "Well," Diane said slowly, "that might be difficult." Emma frowned. "Difficult?" "Your father and I have a trip planned next week. Remember the lake resort I told you about?" Emma's stomach sank. "Mom, Lily is having surgery." "I know, sweetheart," Diane said, sounding mildly sympathetic, "but we've already paid for the trip. It would be a shame to cancel." Emma couldn't believe what she was hearing. "This is your granddaughter," she said quietly. In the background, Emma could hear her father's voice. "What's going on?" Richard asked. Diane covered the phone briefly, then came back. "Your father says you'll probably figure something out." Emma felt something inside her chest crack. She had called hoping for reassurance, maybe even comfort. Instead she received indifference. "So you can't help?" Emma asked. "I'm sure you'll manage," Diane replied. "You always do." The call ended a minute later. Emma sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the dark screen of her phone. Down the hallway, Lily coughed softly in her sleep. Emma wiped away a tear before it could fall. She would handle this the same way she handled everything else. Alone. But as she turned off the lights and walked toward Lily's room, one thought echoed quietly in her mind. The next time her parents needed something from her, she would remember this moment. The week before Lily's surgery felt like a storm Emma had to walk through without shelter. Every day brought a new problem to solve. First there was work. Emma had to explain to her manager that she needed several days off for Lily's hospital stay. While he was sympathetic, the office was already short-staffed. Emma spent long evenings finishing extra reports so her absence wouldn't cause problems. Then there was childcare. Since her parents had refused to help, Emma had to look elsewhere. After several nervous phone calls, her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, offered to watch Lily for a few hours before the hospital admission day. It wasn't ideal, but Emma had no other choice. Through it all, Emma tried to stay strong for Lily. Her daughter didn't fully understand what surgery meant, but she knew something serious was happening. "Mommy, are the doctors going to fix my tummy?" Lily asked one night while Emma brushed her hair before bed. Emma forced a gentle smile. "Yes, sweetheart, they're going to make you feel much better." Lily looked relieved, but Emma could see the worry in her eyes. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Emma sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, and then she saw it. Her mother had posted pictures online. Richard and Diane were already at the lake resort. The photos showed bright sunshine, sparkling water, and her parents smiling with glasses of wine in their hands. Friends surrounded them, laughing and posing for group pictures. Emma stared at the images for a long time. Part of her wanted to feel angry. Another part of her simply felt numb. While she was preparing for her daughter's surgery, her parents were relaxing on vacation. Emma quietly locked her phone and placed it on the table. There was no point thinking about it anymore. She had a bigger responsibility. 2 days later, the morning of the surgery arrived. Emma barely slept the night before. She packed Lily's hospital bag carefully: pajamas, a stuffed bunny, coloring books, and the pink blanket Lily refused to sleep without. At dawn, they drove to the hospital. Lily held her bunny tightly as they walked through the sliding glass doors. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and quiet anxiety. After checking in, nurses guided them to a small hospital room where Lily changed into a tiny blue gown. Emma sat beside her daughter on the bed, gently holding her hand. "Mommy," Lily whispered. "Yes. Are you staying with me?" Emma squeezed her hand. "Of course I am." A nurse soon came to take Lily to the operating room. When the moment arrived, Emma kissed Lily's forehead. "You're very brave," she said softly. Then the doors closed. The waiting room felt colder than the rest of the hospital. Emma sat alone under the dim lights, watching the clock on the wall tick forward 1 second at a time. Each minute felt like an hour. Parents and families sat around her, quietly supporting each other. Emma had no one. She thought briefly about calling her parents, but the idea vanished just as quickly. They had already made their choice. 4 hours later, the surgeon finally walked into the waiting room. Emma jumped to her feet. "Mrs. Parker?" the doctor asked. Emma nodded anxiously. "The surgery went very well," he said with a reassuring smile. "Your daughter is going to be just fine." The relief hit Emma like a wave. Tears streamed down her face as she thanked the doctor again and again. Later that evening, Emma sat beside Lily's hospital bed while her daughter slept peacefully, the stuffed bunny tucked under her arm. The machines hummed quietly in the background. Emma looked at Lily's small face and felt overwhelming gratitude that everything had gone well. But mixed with that gratitude was a quiet realization. When she needed help the most, she had been completely alone. Emma gently brushed Lily's hair away from her forehead and whispered softly to herself, "I'll never forget this, and not out of bitterness, but out of clarity." Because if the day ever came when her parents needed her the same way she had needed them, Emma would remember exactly how it felt to sit alone in that waiting room. Life slowly returned to normal. After Lily's surgery, the first few weeks were filled with doctor visits, medicine schedules, and careful monitoring while Lily recovered. Emma stayed close to her daughter, making sure she rested and followed the doctor's instructions. Thankfully, Lily healed quickly. Within a month, she was back at school, laughing with friends and running across the playground as if nothing had ever happened. Emma felt grateful every time she watched her daughter smile, but the memory of that lonely hospital waiting room never truly faded. Emma didn't speak much to her parents during those months. They sent a short text message after their vacation asking how Lily was doing, but it felt more like an obligation than genuine concern. Emma replied politely but briefly. After that, Communication almost disappeared. Instead of focusing on the hurt, Emma poured her energy into rebuilding her life. She worked harder at her job, picked up a small freelance bookkeeping project in the evenings, and slowly started saving money for Lily's future. Her life became quieter but stronger. Then one rainy evening, nearly 8 months after the surgery, Emma's phone rang. She glanced at the screen. "Mom." Emma hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello." Her mother's voice sounded different, less confident than usual. "Emma." "Hi, sweetheart." Emma leaned against the kitchen counter. "Hi, Mom." There was a pause before Diane spoke again. "We were wondering if you might come over tomorrow. Your father and I, well, we need to talk to you about something." Emma's stomach tightened. "What kind of something?" Another silence followed. Finally Diane sighed. "It's about money." The next afternoon Emma drove to her parents' house. The same house she had visited countless times growing up, the same house where Sunday dinners used to happen before life grew complicated. But when she walked inside, the atmosphere felt heavier. Her father Richard sat at the dining table with a stack of papers in front of him. His shoulders looked slightly hunched, something Emma had never seen before. Diane sat beside him, nervously twisting her hands together. "Emma, thank you for coming," Diane said quietly. Emma sat across from them. "What's going on?" Richard cleared his throat. "You know, I invested some of our retirement money last year," he began. Emma nodded slightly. She remembered hearing something about it during a brief phone conversation months ago. "Well, the investment didn't work out," he admitted. Emma frowned. "How bad is it?" Richard pushed the papers toward her. Emma looked down. Bank statements, loan notices, overdue payments. The numbers were shocking. Her father had lost nearly everything. "We're trying to sell the house," Diane said quietly, "but the market is slow and the bank is threatening foreclosure." Emma slowly placed the papers back on the table. "So what are you asking from me?" Diane looked at her carefully. "We were hoping you might help us for a little while," she said softly. "Just until things stabilize. Maybe a loan or letting us stay with you if we lose the house." Emma stared at them. For a moment old instincts rushed back. They were her parents, the people who had raised her, the people who once held her hand when she was a child. Helping them should have been automatic, but then another memory appeared in her mind, the hospital waiting room. The ticking clock, Lily's frightened face before surgery, and the sound of her mother saying, "I'm sure you'll figure something out." Emma inhaled slowly. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm and steady. "I'm sure you'll figure something out." The words hung in the room like an echo. Both of her parents looked stunned. Richard's eyes widened slightly. Diane's face turned pale. "Emma," she whispered. "You don't mean that?" Emma stood up slowly. "I do." She picked up her purse and looked at them one last time. "When Lily needed surgery," she said quietly, "I asked for help. You chose a vacation instead." Neither of them spoke. Emma walked toward the door, her heart beating heavily but her steps steady. Before leaving, she paused for a moment. "I learned something that week," she said softly without turning around. "You were right." Then she opened the door. People do figure things out. After that day, silence settled between Emma and her parents. Weeks passed without phone calls or messages. At first, Emma wondered if she had been too harsh. Late at night, when Lily was asleep and the house was quiet, doubts sometimes crept into her mind. They were still her parents, but every time the guilt started to grow, Emma remembered the hospital waiting room. She remembered the fear she felt while Lily was in surgery, and the loneliness of facing it without family support. That memory reminded her why she had drawn the line. Life moved forward. Emma focused on her work, her daughter, and the peaceful routine they had built together. Every evening she helped Lily with homework, cooked dinner, and listened to her excited stories about school. Their small house felt warm and safe. One afternoon, about 2 months later, Emma received a short message from her mother. "We sold the house." Emma read the text twice before putting her phone down. She didn't respond. A few days later, another message arrived. "We're moving into a small apartment across town." Again, Emma stayed silent. She didn't feel joy about their situation. There was no satisfaction in knowing her parents had lost the home where she had grown up, but she also didn't feel responsible for fixing their problems. They were learning the same lesson she had learned long ago. Sometimes life forces you to stand on your own. Months passed and the distance between them remained. Then one quiet Saturday afternoon, someone knocked on Emma's front door. Emma opened it and froze. Her mother stood there. Diane looked different. The confident woman Emma had known all her life seemed smaller somehow. Her hair was more gray than before, and there were deep lines around her eyes. "Hi, Emma," she said softly. Emma hesitated but stepped aside to let her in. Lily was in the living room watching cartoons, laughing at the colorful characters on the screen. Diane glanced toward her granddaughter with a mixture of love and regret. "She's grown so much," she whispered. Emma folded her arms gently. "What did you want to talk about?" Diane sat down slowly at the kitchen table. For a moment she didn't speak, then her voice cracked. "I'm sorry." Emma blinked, surprised. "We should have been there for you," Diane continued. "When Lily had surgery, we treated it like an inconvenience instead of a family emergency." Tears filled her eyes. "We thought you would manage because you always do, but that was selfish. We failed you." The room grew quiet. Emma studied her mother carefully. For the first time, the apology didn't sound defensive or dismissive. It sounded real. Still, Emma knew something important. An apology could acknowledge the past, but it couldn't erase it. "You hurt me," Emma said calmly. "I know," Diane whispered, "and Lily needed her grandparents that week." Diane nodded slowly. "I know that too." Emma walked to the living room doorway and watched Lily for a moment. Her daughter was giggling at the television, completely unaware of the heavy conversation happening nearby. Emma felt a deep sense of clarity settle inside her. She walked back to the table. "I'm not shutting you out forever," she said gently. "But things are different now." Diane looked up, listening carefully. "You won't be able to depend on me to fix everything," Emma continued. "And trust takes time to rebuild." Diane wiped her eyes and nodded. "I understand." Emma poured 2 cups of tea and placed one in front of her mother. They sat quietly for a moment. For the first time in a long while, the tension between them felt lighter. Not healed, but honest. Later that evening, after Diane left, Emma tucked Lily into bed. "Mommy," Lily said sleepily. "Yes, sweetheart. Grandma came today." Emma smiled softly. "Yes, she did." "Is she coming back again?" Emma kissed her daughter's forehead. Maybe. As Emma turned off the bedroom light, she realized something important. The sweetest revenge had never been about watching her parents struggle. It had been about learning her own strength. She had survived the hardest moment of her life without their help. And because of that, she knew something now that she hadn't known before. She didn't need anyone who refused to stand beside her. Emma closed the door quietly and walked down the hallway, feeling stronger than ever.